So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Eva Lanicka, and I'm the Scholarships Manager at Canon Collins Trust. And I'm here today with my colleagues, Dorothy Chirva. Dorothy is the Scholarships Officer, and Tendai Manyangadze. So thank you so much for joining us. Dorothy and I will first talk you through some of the scholarships we currently have open for applications, and we'll give you some practical advice on how to submit a scholarship applications and how to go through the application process. And at the end, we will give you an opportunity to ask us questions, and we'll try to answer as many of those as we can. Actually, what might be the best way is if you start typing your questions even throughout the presentations in the chat, and at the end, we'll read through them and we'll answer them. So let me just go to the first slide. Just bear with me. Okay, so firstly, I'll just tell you very briefly about Canon Collins Trust. So we are an organization that offers scholarships for study, mostly postgraduate study at South African universities. We do have a couple of undergraduate scholarships as well, but it's mostly master's, PhD, and one honors level scholarship. We do also nominate for Commonwealth scholarships in the United Kingdom. So these are scholarships for master's and PhD level, and we assist with the application and the selection process for the fellowships for postgraduate study in Ireland. So that's about Canon Collins Trust. If you're interested in our mission statement, we are advancing social justice in Southern Africa by building, supporting, and connecting strong communities of ethical leaders, activists, and organizations who collectively contribute to positive change. So, and we do this through funding projects, postgraduate study, and research. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Dorothy first, and Dorothy will speak about the scholarships we currently have open for applications, and then I'll come back in with some practical advice on applying. Over to you, Dorothy.
Thanks, Eva. Okay, so we have a number of scholarships currently open. We have our scholarships that are open for study in South Africa, which are the RMTF, the Sol Plaatje, the Tom Quebber, and the Pegasus Scholarship, and those are all for study in South Africa. Then we also currently have our Ireland application open, and that is for study in Ireland, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. So in terms of our scholarships that we have for study in South Africa, we first of all have our RMTF scholarship. This is for master's and PhD study at a South African university. And to be considered for this scholarship, you must be a national of or have refugee status in either Angola, Botswana, Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Swaziland, or Zambia. And you are normally a resident in one of these countries. So, sometimes people leave kind of other activities, but normally you would consider yourself a resident there, and you must be in possession of a good first degree. You'll hear that phrase quite a lot, good first degree. What we mean by this is really a minimum kind of second class upper division or the equivalent in your country, or you must be about to graduate in the year that you're applying. So for this year you'd be finishing by December, and you are on track to get one of these degrees. We also have the Sol Plaatje, which is very similar to our RMTF scholarship. So this is also for master's and PhD study, but the eligibility requirements are slightly different. To be considered for this scholarship, you must be a national of or have refugee status in either Namibia, South Africa, or Zimbabwe, and normally a resident in the country. You must be in possession of that good first degree, and you must be applying to study at South African university. We tend to ask that scholars, try to meet all these requirements before applying. So if you have kind of any questions about eligibility, please do ask them. So the Tom Quebber and the Pegasus scholarship are slightly different. So this is for master's, and this is for honours and master's study. This is our only scholarship available that would cover honours study as well. So this is a good one to apply for if you've just finished your bachelor's. So to qualify for this, you should be Black African or coloured South African national, normally residing in South Africa, and you must be in possession of a good first degree. So if you're applying for honours study, we ask that you have a good bachelor's degree, and vice versa for master's study. So those are the main scholarships we have for study in South Africa. The application process for them is the same for all of them. So applications are now open for all of those scholarships. You know, Eva's going to do some helpful tips and kind of guide to maximizing your success in terms of the application process. But this is where we are at now. So the deadline for all of these scholarships is the 22nd of July at 3 p.m. GMT. So that's also Central African time. So yeah, we make sure to give yourself time to apply for those. You know, you don't want to be scrambling last minute. So once the deadline hits, we will move into an internal processing of assessing and shortlisting. This process we aim to kind of get done like a few months after the deadline for applications. So we will go through, we will shortlist, and you will receive an email about whether or not you've been successful in the shortlisting. If you are shortlisted, we will then invite you to an interview. This will be a virtual interview with some of the team, as well as some external people who could be on your interview panel. We will interview you, and then if you are successful at the interview, we move on to the selection process. And so this is the time where we select our scholars for the year, and we move on to kind of processing and admitting and like, you know, getting all those finer details such as contracts signed. So that's the general process for the scholarship. It's a process that, you know, starts now and goes up until November, December time. So it is quite a long process, but we like to make sure that we're really getting the best applicants that we can. And so that's why it takes so long. So the other scholarship that we have open at the moment is the Ireland Scholarship. So this is for study in Ireland. We have 3 variations of the scholarship open. So we have the Carter Asmal Scholarship, and this is open to applicants from South Africa with a good honours degree. We also have the Ireland Fellows SIDS program. This is open to applicants from Mauritius with a good honours degree. And we also have the Ireland Fellows scholarship, which is open to applicants from Zimbabwe and Lesotho with a good honours degree. The application cycle for this is a bit longer. There's stage 1, which is where we are at now, and stage 1 closes on the 28th of July. And so kind of get your applications in now, and then we move on to stage 2. And that's like a process that if you are successful in your stage 1 application, that we can talk more about kind of further on if you're applying. So this is for study in Ireland, and this is only for master's study. So this isn't for PhD study, it's only for master's study. And that yeah, so it's typically about a year to 2 years, with the kind of thought and process that you will be coming back to your home countries to kind of create links and connections with South Africa. We also have the scholarships that will open later on in the year. So this includes the Commonwealth. As Eva mentioned earlier, we do assist the Commonwealth, and we act as a nominating agency for them. So this is for study in the UK, and so that will open a little bit later. We also have the Joel Joffe and Lee Day LLB scholarship. This is an undergraduate scholarship that prioritizes 3rd and 4th year undergraduate law students at the University of Fort Hare and the Western Cape, as well as we also have the University of London LLM scholarship. This is a Masters of Law scholarship, and this is for distance study. So it is kind of thought that you would undertake the scholarship while living in your home country, so in South Africa or wherever, and you would study by distance by the University of London. So yeah, that is a brief overview of all of our scholarships, as well as kind of the ones that we have that are coming up. Obviously there'll be time for questions at the end if you have any questions about eligibility, but I'm going to pass on to Eva now to talk about kind of the nitty-gritty of applying, shall we say.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Dorothy, and hello everyone again. So I'm going to talk about applying first. And I think the very first advice on maximizing your success chance is actually choosing the right course and the right institution. This probably seems like the most obvious one, but when you're thinking about how to select the course that you want to study and how to select the university, do not just think about the course you want to pursue, but do research the institution where you are going to study in detail. So think about your academic needs and your professional needs, you know, and what university is the best fit for you. Some courses will have exactly the same name, will sound the same, but once you research them in more detail, you find out that very different modules are included, they're structured differently, and they come with different opportunities. So do research your course. If you are applying for a scholarship, you will at some point in the selection process be asked, why have you chosen the particular university and the particular course at that university? It's very important to also know that different universities have different strengths and they specialize in different research areas. So especially if you're doing a PhD or postdoc or even master's by research, it is even more important that your chosen institution is the right fit for you and for your research area. So do not just apply because you know, the location of the university is convenient or because there's a scholarship advertised. You want to be sure that they can offer the depth of expertise and the right support that you will be needing for completing your research and your studies. So also, if you're doing a PhD, do not just rely on the university to allocate your supervisor. You will definitely want to do the research into different lecturers and their expertise very carefully before applying. So do have a look at, you know, what sort of research expertise is available at different universities. Look at your potential supervisor, look at their publications, their area of research. And once you identify someone who might be specializing in the same field you want to do, it's a good idea to reach out to them and to start a conversation about potentially supervising you. You know, try to get a feedback on your research idea. And if you do have a proposal already, then on your methodology, on your proposal. If you cannot get feedback from your potential supervisor, at least reach out to someone working in your field and try to get some feedback. So that will definitely help you in, you know, in your application to the university, but also in your application to I'm really sorry, but I hope you can all still hear me. I'm having some technical difficulties. Maybe Dorothy and Tendai, if you can just confirm that you can still hear me. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
we still hear
sorry.
you.
Yeah, I think I'm back. My screen just suddenly went black and I wasn't sure what I was still here. Perfect. So that's choosing the right course. The other thing to consider is also do think about your personal needs, not just the academic needs. So, you know, are you able to actually relocate if the course is offered in a different place, different country, different town? And what does that mean for you financially as well? You know, do you have any children, family? Are you the breadwinner? Will you be able to take study leave? And if so, how will this impact you financially? The one thing to consider is, does the scholarship actually cover full costs of your study? Some of the scholarships that will be fully funded scholarships still do not cover everything you might need to get covered. So just think about, you know, your financial requirements and whether the funding is what you need and you know, and whether there's another way of supplementing the income from the scholarship if you do need to relocate. You're going to be committing several years of your life to this, especially if you're choosing postgraduate level and if it's a PhD, and you're going to have to make considerable sacrifices, whether that's financial or personal. So think very carefully about your choice and your decision and just make sure that it is actually worth all the sacrifices you're going to have to make. So that's to choosing the right course. Now we're going to move on to the next slide. Thank you, Dorothy. So when it comes to applying for scholarships, there are obviously so many opportunities available. Many of them are very competitive and very much aware that applicants will be applying for as many opportunities as possible because everyone wants to improve their chances of succeeding. But it is very important to consider what the agenda of the institution or organization offering the scholarship actually is. So be aware that scholarships are not neutral and scholarships are offered for a reason. The institution or the organization offering the scholarship will be doing so because they want to achieve a goal, and you should know what that goal is. So do your research before you apply, and do make sure that your own goals or your own values are compatible with the goals of the organization offering the scholarship. If not compatible, at least not conflictual. So I think that's quite important. For example, if you're an environmentalist, you may not want to take up a scholarship offered by a company that is known for their oil spills. And this is important because first, it will affect your CV at some point, but most importantly, if you do succeed in the selection and you do make it to the further stages, especially the interview stage, the scholarship provider will be looking into your fit for the organization. So that's where your values and your goals will matter and will be questioned. The other reason why this is important is because scholarships usually come with opportunities to network and to build your professional networks. So you want to make sure that the professional networks you're building are useful to your career and to your future direction. When it comes to Canon Collins agenda or goals, you can find information about this on the website. But we believe that Southern Africa's development depends on strong leadership in key fields, and we offer scholarships to candidates who show leadership potential and commitment to contributing to social justice development in Southern Africa. So that's that kind of informs the profile of an applicant we will be looking to support. The other thing to consider when you're looking for or when you're researching scholarships is eligibility criteria. Some eligibility criteria are not negotiable, and these are usually around nationality, citizenship, or age or gender, if this is specified, often academic merit as well. And so do make sure that you meet these. Don't waste your time applying for a scholarship if it's clear that you are not eligible. Often sorting through eligibility criteria is the very first filter, and you might just be wasting your time writing an application form that might not even be read. So that's just another. Some of the eligibility criteria an organization might be willing to overlook. It might be worth checking with them, but these are usually not the kind of very clear-cut gender, nationality, age grades. So just something to be aware of. Okay, if we can move to the next slide, Dorothy. Okay, and now when it comes to working on your application form, so once you select your university, your course, and your scholarship provider, and you start working on your application form, do not underestimate how long it takes to actually write a good application form. You will need time to think about your responses to each question. And it's a good idea to actually start working on this and work on this over a longer period of time. So do save your drafts, come back to your answers. Often there's a word limit, so you might have to just kind of leave certain things out, but you do not want to leave the important things out. So just do give yourself enough time to write a good application. Scholarship providers often receive thousands of application forms, and the process is very, very competitive. Assessors get to read so many similar stories, and it is the well-written application forms that will stand out. So just a few pointers. Do not write in capital letters. It sounds like a very obvious one, but many applicants do write in capital letters. It is very, very hard to read and to follow what you're trying to say in the application form. Do not repeat or copy and paste sections. Even if you feel that the question is asking you something that you've been asked in a previous section of an application form, do not copy and paste your answers. It will disadvantage you. Don't write vague answers. Be as specific as you possibly can and give examples. So do not say you have leadership skills. Give examples of how you've used this in the past. Try to give examples from your workplace or from your academics. These are usually the best, but even your personal private life, if you feel like you have not yet had an opportunity to showcase your leadership skills, it's okay to use examples from your personal life. Check your grammar, spell checking and all that. And when it comes to supporting documents, do start working and collecting your supporting documents from the very beginning when you start working on your application form. Do not underestimate how long it takes to actually put these together, especially if you're required to provide reference letters or documents that rely on other people. Do start collecting this as early as you possibly can. Lecturers often get many requests for reference letters at the same time of the year. And so, you know, just make sure that you're giving them enough time to write you a good reference. So check what is required ahead of time. Give yourself enough time to provide and supply these documents. Your letters of recommendation do count. They are read by all assessors and they're read by the team and, you know, during the selection. And strong personalized reference letters stand out more than generic reference letters. So do think carefully who you're going to ask to write you a reference letter, and do give them enough time to write you a good reference letter. If an assessor who's deciding on your application form is undecided, the reference letter will often tip it either way. So, you know, it will either help you or it will disadvantage you. And do submit your application ahead of time. So this is very important. Most scholarship providers use online application systems. They often get overloaded when the deadline approaches. So avoid applying on the deadline, on the last day, when the scholarship is open for applications. Especially if you still need to upload documents, try to avoid the last few hours. You can face technical difficulties. It often takes much, much longer to save your answers, to upload documents. Yeah, so systems do get overloaded. And now this is very important. Do keep a copy of your application on your supporting documents. If your application makes it to the next stage, usually if you do make it to the interview stage, questions during the interview will be very similar to what you have already been asked in your application form. So just keep this for your record and it will help you to prepare for your interview. If you're applying for a PhD, proposals do matter. We're very much aware that most PhD applicants will be building and working on their proposal in the very first year of their studies, and that's absolutely fine. We do not expect them to completely stick to their research proposal that they're submitting with their application form. But we do need to check whether the research is feasible, whether it's doable in the time that the applicant is claiming that they want to complete it by, and whether it has a certain contribution to the field. So, you know, we do need to see the proposal, and the proposal does matter. Okay, so that's, if we can move on to the next slide, please. Interviews. Okay, so I think this is my favorite part. So if you do get shortlisted for the interviews, I think the one thing to remember is that most scholarships are incredibly competitive. And if you do get to the interview stage, you would have been selected for, you know, you definitely submitted a very strong application form, probably very convincing reference letters. You meet all the requirement criteria, and the panel is interested in getting to know you. Usually your odds are much better at this stage. But it's still competitive, so plan ahead, research, and prepare as much as you possibly can. Do research the organization or the institution offering the scholarship, not just the university and the course. If the scholarship organization has a website, have a look at it, find out more information about their values, their programs, their events, and their work. And, you know, and what are their priorities, what sort of applicant they might be looking for. You can usually get quite a good sense of who the organization is looking for simply from their website. Arrive informed. Doing your homework will make an impression, but also it will make the experience much more relaxed and much more easier for you. Now, if you can find out who is on the interview panel and try to find out a little bit more about them. For instance, knowing that you have an academic working in your field on an interview panel will help you answer some of the questions slightly differently that you might answer them if you're being interviewed by someone from a very different field. So it does help to know who you have on the panel and what their background might be. Review your application and the questions that you have already been asked, and think about how you might answer some of the more frequently asked questions. You can get a lot of information about these on the internet, but in the next slide, I will also give you a few examples. Most importantly, try to be honest, spontaneous, and genuine. Think about real life examples when answering questions. Yeah, especially when it comes to skills and certain skills, certain values. Think about examples. So do your research in advance, prepare, and think of good examples. Prepare your answers, but do not over prepare. This might sound like do not read your answers during the interview. It's okay to glance at your notes. If you have notes, it's absolutely fine. But do not just sit there reading your answers, especially if it's a virtual interview. It's very hard to build a connection with the panel. Reading your answers make it very, very difficult for them to connect with you. And you do want them to connect. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it for the interview advice. I think most importantly, just remember that you have already made it through a very, very competitive process. And this is probably the easiest part, even though it doesn't seem like that. Just breathe, stay calm, relax, and just be aware that you're there because the panel wants to get to know you. If we could just move on to the next slide, please, Dorothy. Okay, so come on, interview questions. There's lots of these on the internet, but I'll just read few for you. So these are the questions that you might be asked during different interviews. I'm not saying that these are the questions that Canon Collins asks, but we might ask some of them. A very common one is, tell us about yourself. What are your greatest strengths, weaknesses? What are your leadership skills or your leadership experience? Tell us about an achievement you are most proud of. What are you wanting to study, or what do you want to research, and why? Why does it matter? Why and how have you chosen your university and your course? What do you want to accomplish in life? What are your future plans? And for PhD applicants, be prepared to answer questions around your research, your methodology, theoretical framework, and potential impact of your study, especially if there is someone from your area on the panel. Usually at the end of the interview, you're given an opportunity to ask questions. You might feel very exhausted by this point, and you probably don't want to ask anything, and it's okay not to ask anything. That's absolutely fine. But you might just want to use this opportunity to ask a little bit more about the process and the next stages. So if you have any questions in terms of what might be required afterwards, this is probably the best time to ask. And also, if you have any questions about the work of the organization and what the scholarship actually includes, that's also fine. It's absolutely fine to ask questions about financial support. These are very important questions to consider. So do ask, but also if there's other things you might want to know about the scholarship provider, and the scholarship package and what it actually includes, whether there are any events or networking opportunities, this is your time to ask. So use the time wisely. I would probably advise you not to ask questions that you can easily get answers to from either the website or the scholarship guidelines, because it just shows that you haven't done your research and you're not prepared. So do avoid that. And do not ask panelists questions that are unrelated to the scholarship or the work of the organization. We often get asked personal questions or questions about elections in our country. If it's not really related to your area, to the area of your study and to the scholarship, to the work of that organization, just avoid asking that type of questions. Also remember to keep your questions brief and insightful if you have any questions. And I think that's all when it comes to interviews. Can just go to the next slide. Thank you. So as Dorothy mentioned, we do have few scholarships open for applications at the moment. So my probably advice to you would be check the eligibility criteria, check what the scholarship offers. And if you think that this is a good fit for you, we would very much welcome your applications. Our scholarships for postgraduate study in South Africa will close on 22nd of July. And scholarships for master's study in Ireland will close on 28th of July. You can find all the information on our website, which is www.canoncollins.org. And if you do choose to apply, we wish you the best of luck. I think that's all from us. So thank you so much for listening to our presentation. And if you have any questions, we're going to answer these now. I can see that there's quite a few questions and comments in the chat already. And I can see that Dorothy has started answering these, so thank you so much. But if there's any more, or if you feel that your question hasn't been answered yet, please just type it now, and I'll answer some of the questions. Okay, so there's a question about studying part-time. I have been accepted to do my PhD in journalism. Is preference given to students completing their postgraduate studies full-time or part-time? Canon Collins does not have preference, but this is a very, very good question. Do check with the scholarship provider before you apply, so you don't waste your time. But for Canon Collins Trust, no, we do structure the financial support around your needs, and we can support applicants studying over a longer period of time, so that wouldn't be a problem. Can you
There's
please?
another question about the quantity of scholarships. So we actually don't have a set number of scholarships that we award every year, just because, you know, we also open to masters, to PhD students. We also do accept people that are, you know, in the first year of studying or something like that. So like we're not 100% like we are giving out 4 scholarships this year, we're giving out 5. Do you know what I mean? So we just urge people to apply and just be as competitive an applicant as possible. Sometimes we award a few more, sometimes like a few less, but you know, there's not a set number that we are trying to fill every year.
There's another question asking about PhD studies in child and family studies. Yes, so we do have 3 key priority areas. One of them is arts and humanities, one of them is social justice. So if you can explain how your scholarship in an application form for all PhD applicants, you know, there is a section where you can explain how it aligns with our priority areas. There's a question from someone in their second year of PhD studies. Am I eligible to apply? Yes, absolutely. In fact, most of our PhD scholarship beneficiaries do get a scholarship, not in the first year, but in the second year, simply because by that point, the proposal is a bit more developed and they have a slightly better idea of what it is they want to do with it. So yeah, applicants are eligible at all levels. Is it possible to work part-time while studying for the scholarship? Yes. The scholarship is not fully funded. Even if you get the highest amount we can offer, you will still need some additional income. So I think the highest amount we can offer for most scholarships is fees fully paid plus 60,000 rand towards living costs. So you will need additional support.
Related to that, there's another question around if you have a full-time job, will it minimize your chance of getting a particular scholarship? It won't, but our scholarships are means tested, so you know we do kind of look at the needs of the applicant when it comes to awarding stipends. So while it might not impact your chance of getting a scholarship, it might, you know, minimize some of like that means testing when we kind of look at your particular needs and your particular circumstances and situations. So yeah, that's that on that.
Yeah, but we do have applicants with, you know, full-time income, and we do have applicants with slightly less pressing financial needs. And often what we do is we just offer smaller funding or smaller awards. So it does sometimes work out.
And another one that says, can you accept a Canon Collins scholarship to supplement another scholarship? Absolutely, as long as the requirements for it's always good to check if you are currently holding another scholarship or if you're applying for other scholarships. Some other scholarships do have limitations that you can't accept other scholarships, but we don't personally have those. In fact, we do encourage that people do apply for more, you know, multiple streams of funding. So we don't have any rules about that, but it is always good to check with other scholarship providers that they don't require students to give up other scholarships in order to get that scholarship.
And also there's a very interesting question about from someone who wants to apply for a PhD scholarship, but they're short by 0.5 in their grade and whether they can apply. So earlier I spoke about eligibility criteria, and I advised everyone not to apply if you don't meet the eligibility criteria. But this is actually a very good question. So if you're applying for a scholarship, like for instance, Commonwealth or the fellowships in Ireland, you will simply be excluded, but based on the fact that you do not meet the required grade. If you're applying for a PhD level and you're applying for a Canon Collins scholarship, we do look at other things. So we wouldn't necessarily exclude your application straight away. So if you have very convincing work experience, and leadership experience, then that will probably supplement the grades. So if your grades are borderline and if you do not strictly meet the eligibility criteria for the Canon Collins scholarship, it is still worth trying, because you might just earn enough points for work experience and for leadership. But when it comes to the international scholarships, I probably wouldn't waste my time, simply because it will just exclude your application based on the fact that you do not meet the grade requirement.
There's another one about journalism and media studies falling under humanities. We didn't touch on it earlier on, but we do actually have kind of so if you apply under the Sol Plaatje scholarship, we do actually have kind of a Barton scholarship for journalism within that Sol Plaatje scholarship. So we are looking for journalism and media candidates. So absolutely do apply. Yeah, just if you our criteria is quite broad as well. So if you are kind of thinking, oh, my work does kind of fit into this, it is always good to maybe just have a look at your research and see if it could align with some of our key areas that we want to look at.
I can see that there's also a very technical question. So somebody's asking, somebody's saying that they're having trouble registering to apply. It claims that they're already registered. However, when I log in, it claims that my details are not registered. How can I get past this hurdle? I would probably suggest trying to use a different email account. And if that doesn't solve the problem, then please do email scholarships@Canon Collins. If you've already registered, you should have a password, and you should try to kind of retrieve your old password. But if you're failing to do this, I think my first point of advice would be try using a different email account. If that fails, contact scholarships.
Additionally to that, if you are kind of midway through applying and you've maybe lost your password and you reset your password, it's always a good idea to look into your spam first. We tend to get quite a lot of emails from people saying, oh, I can't find the link. So just make sure you've checked all of your inbox, your spam box, social, however your provider kind of splits that up. Sometimes we find that emails go into there. So just have a look in there and then contact scholarships if you really can't.
And another question is, if you qualify to apply under 2 categories, is it advisable to apply for both, or should we just choose one? What advice can you give? If by categories you mean the scholarships, the different scholarships, then just submit one scholarship application form. If you qualify for 2 scholarships, we will consider you for both. They all end up in the same place at the end, and they are read by the same people. So we will consider you for all the scholarship programs you are eligible for. So please do not submit more than one application form.
So there's a question that says, what happens in a situation where I don't get admission to the university I selected for admission to a different university and the same research area? This is kind of a case where we would ask that you inform us, just because a lot of the times your offer letter is attached to a specific university, so because you've told us that way. But we are often quite amenable. We try to really accommodate, it will just be a case of reevaluating the offer that you were given, as well as kind of any kind of additional stipend requirements, all those kinds of things. So it would just be a conversation that would happen. So if that was to happen, we'd ask that you inform us as at the earliest point that that you weren't getting admission into the university that you initially applied with, and we can go from there.
There's a few questions about proposals, so I'm just going to answer some of these. So if you're applying for a PhD scholarship, how long or how detailed should the research proposal be? We do not have a minimum requirement in terms of a length. And if your application is shortlisted for future stages, you will be given an opportunity to provide an updated version of your research proposal. So we're very much aware that if you're applying, if you're new to your PhD, you are in very early stages. It's okay with your initial application to supply something that is at least 3 pages. Please just at least include some methodology so we have an idea what it is you want to do and whether it's feasible, conceptual framework. But you will be, if your application is shortlisted, you will be given an opportunity to provide a slightly more up-to-date or updated version of your proposal just before you get to the interview stage, so around November. So I think at this stage, I would say anything that is minimum 3 pages and has some sort of methodology will do.
There's a question from Ona who's saying, I applied last year and didn't make it to the interview stage, and did make it to the interview stage. I wish to try my luck again. Do I have to change my wording completely from stage 1 again?
So this is from for the Ireland scholarship, right, Ona? So you wouldn't have to change your wording completely, especially for stage 1. If you didn't make it kind of onwards, you can reapply. However, you can only apply for the Ireland scholarship twice. So do be warned that, like, if you have applied 2 times prior, you wouldn't be eligible this year. And if you do apply this year, this would be your last year of eligibility to apply for the Ireland scholarship. So that's the big thing for that scholarship.
Yeah, somebody just asked whether there's a problem with applying for both Solplyki and Ireland fellows, and does it disadvantage? It doesn't disadvantage. There's a slightly different timeline. So the Solplyki scholarship, so if this is for master study, Solplyki scholarship, the master study would be starting in January 2025, and the Kader Asmal fellowship opportunity would be starting in August, September 2025. The selection happens roughly at the same time. So if your application is strong enough and you get through the initial stages, you will not be disadvantaged in the initial stages. But once we get to the interview, because you will be interviewed by the same panel, you might just be asked questions around your preference. And we might then consider you for the scholarship that will be your first choice. Okay, so
for Desires asked if they're applying to 2 South African universities, how do I go about it? Since also asked me for the 1 university I'm applying in. You could just fill in 1 university for the time being, as long as they are similar courses. It's again a problem that we can kind of address if you are to make it further on in the application process, and we will just kind of, if you do make it further, there will be conversations about which university you're either leaning towards, or, you know, you would be wanting to go to.
There's a question about admission letter from the university before applying for the scholarship. No, that's not a requirement. I think in the process of applying, there's a drop-down list in the actual application form where you asked whether you have applied already, whether you have been accepted, or whether your application is under consideration, or whether you are yet to apply. We're very much aware that the universities have different deadlines and different timeline. That's fine. We would probably be, if your application is shortlisted, we'll probably be checking with you again closer to the interviews whether you've applied and, you know, at what stage your application is. But it's not a disadvantage in the initial stages because universities have slightly different deadlines than we do.
So there's another question that says, can one person apply for both masters and PhD at the same time? So for the scholarship. So if I'm understanding your question properly, Beata, so we would say that you would apply for the course that you are intending on studying in the January academic year. So if you have a honours degree and you're intending to study for a master's degree, we would then invite you to apply for the master's degree. It would then be a separate application process to apply for PhD funding. And you would have to apply in a different application cycle when you are intending on starting that study. So that's how that would work. So you can't necessarily apply for master's funding and PhD funding to run at the same time. You'd have to do your you'd have to apply for the course you intend to study, which I'm assuming is going to be a master's course. And then after you complete your master's, we would then invite you to apply if you wanted to reapply for a PhD, but they don't just run into each other. It would be two separate courses, so two separate application processes.
There's a question about admission to the university. So what happens in a situation where I don't get admission to the university I selected, but I get admission to a different university, but under the same research area? In your application form, please just write please include your first choice. So your preferred choice of the university and your preferred course. If this changes throughout the process, it's not a problem. You will just need to inform us. So if your application does get shortlisted and you do make it to the interview stage, if you're no longer going for your first choice because you didn't get accepted or because you change your mind or whatever the reason is, please just let us know. That is if your application is shortlisted. So it's not a problem. And, you know, if at your interview you still don't know, we will probably have a conversation with you about this. But we have in the past supported many people who ended up going to different institutions, and sometimes even to a slightly different course to what was in the application form. So it's usually not a problem. There's a question about password. So somebody's working on their online application form already and tried resetting a password. This is often, I think quite a few people are struggling with this. If you're resetting your password on GAP grants, this is an automated process and the password gets automatically emailed to you. It often ends up in your spam folder simply because it's an automated message. So please do check your spam folder and it should be there.
There's another question about, so is the master's qualification not considered for a PhD scholarship? It seems there is a good emphasis on good first degree. We do consider the master's qualification for PhD scholarship. We try to emphasize good first degree because often if you have a good first degree, that's kind of the gateway to getting into the subsequent degrees afterwards. The way our regulations work is that we would encourage all applicants to have the qualifications that get them onto the course that they're applying for. So while we put emphasis on, you know, a good first degree, etc., if you're applying for a PhD scholarship in the university and the course in which you're applying has stipulations for what type of master's qualification that you need to have, we would recommend, strongly urge that scholars have that qualification so that they're able to get onto the course, because you know you will have to apply for your course individually and get onto it. So that would be the answer to that question.
There's another question asking how many scholarships are being awarded. I think Dorothy, you answered this earlier in the Q&A, but there's no fixed number, and it differs from year to year and for different scholarships. So there's no fixed number. In terms of, there's a question about Tom Kweba eligibility criteria. So someone's asking whether it's referring to all Africans residing in South Africa or Black South Africans residing in South Africa. For Tom Kweba is specifically for South African nationals residing in South Africa, and they must be Black African or colored Africans. So this is, if you do not meet the nationality or these criteria, then you can apply for sole apply key scholarship.
Someone's asked, is the scholarship limited to just tuition fees only? It's not limited to just tuition fee. There is a stipend that can come along with the scholarship. But this is kind of, we touched on this earlier, our scholarship, we don't see our scholarship as a full package. So, you know, it won't cover completely everything from tuition fee to rent to living. It won't cover that. That's not something that we consider our scholarship to do. So we always recommend that people do apply for extra funding or maybe part-time jobs, you know, anything kind of like that. So the scholarship is not only limited to tuition fees. Sometimes it can be, but that is it's quite a needs-based approach that we take to selection and to awarding stipends. So it will, you know, there's lots of factors that go into it, relocation, just a number of factors that go into making that decision.
I think we might have answered all the questions, Dorothy. Tendai, I don't know, am I missing something?
Does the response rate take into consideration visa applications? So is this in terms of getting I can't tell, Generosa, if you mean this is in terms of when we do give out awards and scholarships. We try to award them kind of on a timeline, and that's pretty kind of fixed every year. So, you know, we try to tend to get applicants ready and knowing kind of towards like November time, sometimes a bit later than that. So, and then it's kind of just in terms of getting that process and that application started and going. I don't know if that's what you mean.
Somebody's asking to briefly run them through the stages of the application because they joined late. I'm just going to say because there's different scholarships, obviously, with the different stages and different processes, and I don't think we have enough time to go through that again. But if you're interested in applying for the fellowships in Ireland, then all the stages are listed in the guidelines for applying. If you're interested in applying for the scholarships for Canon Collins, the application is currently open for applications until the 22nd. Once the applications are read and shortlisted, if you're shortlisted, you will be asked to submit reference letters at some point a bit later, and interviews will happen in November. Do you take into account applicants' salary if they're working full-time or studying part-time? We take into consideration the salary when we're deciding on the level of support. So your salary will not disadvantage you when applying, but we will take that into consideration when we're deciding how much money or what sort of support we can actually offer you.
Somebody asked about Tom Quebber and if postgraduate diplomas in science are eligible.
Oh, they're not. Sorry, I've been meaning to answer this question a few times. Unfortunately not. It's only honors and master's level study. What happens if you haven't received your degree yet? My graduation is in November, and that's the only time they will hand out the certificate. So how do we work around this? Okay, so this depends on what scholarship you're applying for. There's very different requirements for the fellowships in Ireland and for the Canon Collins Scholarship. Canon Collins Scholarship, it's not a problem because when you're submitting an application form for your degree certificate, you should at least have your, I mean, if you're applying for honors level and your degree certificate is not yet available, then you can simply attach your transcript or attach a note explaining that your degree certificate will be available in November. If you're applying for further levels, then you should, you know, have a degree certificate from the previous. So if you're applying for masters, then you will have your undergraduate. If you're applying for PhD, you will have your honors, even if you don't have the most recent one attached your previous degree certificate. If you're applying for the fellowships in Ireland, there is a requirement that you must have completed your studies and have the degree certificate available. So I think that will probably mean that you're not eligible. There is a section on documentation where you need scanned degree documents. Do you need degree certificate or transcript of both? It's stipulated in the attachments, but you need to provide both. If I'm only graduating next year, but I finish my degree this year, can I submit transcript? Yes, you can, providing that you're not applying for the fellowships in Ireland. Does applicant who is looking to work in the mining industry, but not in the environmental side of it, will be disadvantaged? Okay, so the scholarships, it depends on how you argue your application. If there is a social justice angle to what it is you want to do in the mining industry, then you won't be disadvantaged. But if there's no social justice angle, then your application will not be eligible. Okay, so yes, so when you're applying for there's a question about applying for the fellowships in Ireland. I understand that we are supposed to apply for the university you want funding from. However, with the Ireland universities, the university applications are open from September until January. How do we go about it? Yes, you do not apply for the university in Ireland just yet. You simply apply for the scholarship. And if your application is successful, if you go through the interview process and you succeed, then the embassy will actually assist you with your application to the university. So the process is slightly different for the fellowships in Ireland than for the Canon Collins postgraduate scholarships in South Africa. So yes, for those you do not apply for the university just yet. You wait for the outcome from the scholarship. Okay, I think
that's everything.
Yeah, I think we're done.
Mhm.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for your time. Thank you for joining us today. And if you are applying for scholarships, then best of luck. And we're looking forward to reading your applications. I can see that there's few more questions popping up. Just very briefly, can I apply for both scholarships? Yes, you can if you mean applying for Ireland and South Africa study. But if you do get shortlisted, we will at some point ask you about your preference. Recording, I think we can make the recording available, Tony, can we? Yes, so
Yeah.
we will make the recording available. Yeah, I think that's all. I think we've covered all the questions. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time and good luck with your applications. We're looking forward to reading them.